They brought him in with no tags, no wallet, and enough scars to map out every war of the last decade. The doctors saw a dying man. The orderlies saw a lunatic who had already broken 2 restraints. But when Trauma Room 4 went into lockdown because the patient had turned a scalpel against the chief of surgery, the hospital called SWAT. They didn't understand. He wasn't psychotic. He was executing a defense protocol. He was a weapon malfunction deep behind enemy lines. While the police loaded their rifles, one nurse walked past the barricade. She didn't have a vest. She just had a name, a call sign that shouldn't have existed outside of a classified file in the Pentagon. The rain over Seattle wasn't just falling. It was trying to drown the city. At St. Jude's Medical Center, the ER doors hissed open, admitting a gust of freezing wind and 2 paramedics pushing a gurney with a frantic urgency that made everyone look up. Male, John Doe, approximate age 35. The lead paramedic, a guy named Miller, shouted over the din of the waiting room. Found on the side of I-5. Multiple GSWs to the abdomen. Possible internal hemorrhage. He's combative. We had to sedate him, but he burned through 5 milligrams of Versed like it was water. Amelia Hart looked up from the triage station. She was 42, a veteran nurse who had spent her 20s in Landstuhl, Germany, treating boys who had been blown apart in places they couldn't pronounce. She knew the look in Miller's eyes. It wasn't just urgency. It was fear. Trauma 4, Dr. Sterling barked. Sterling was the new attending. Brilliant, arrogant, and entirely too young to understand that medicine wasn't just about plumbing. It was about people. Get security in there. He's thrashing. Amelia abandoned her clipboard and followed the rush. Inside Trauma 4, chaos reigned. The patient was a wall of muscle and scar tissue, slick with rain and blood. Despite having lost what looked like 2 pints of blood, he was fighting with a primal, terrified ferocity. His eyes were wide open, pupils blown, darting around the room, scanning for threats, not helpers. "Hold him down!" Sterling yelled, trying to get a stethoscope to the man's chest. "Get off me!" The voice was a gravelly rasp, sounding like it had been broken by screaming. The man didn't just shove the orderly. He twisted his hips and used the leverage of his legs to throw a 200-pound man into the crash cart. It was a tactical move. Amelia stopped in the doorway. She watched the man's hands. He wasn't flailing. He was reaching for his waistband, checking for a sidearm that wasn't there, then sweeping his left hand toward his chest, looking for a radio. "Restraints! Leather restraints, now!" Sterling screamed, backing away as the patient swung a wild haymaker that missed the doctor's jaw by an inch. "Don't touch me!" the man roared. "Perimeter breached! I need an extract. I need an extraction now." "He's psychotic," Sterling muttered, grabbing a syringe from a tray. "Get me haloperidol, 10 milligrams. We need to knock him out before he bleeds to death." Amelia moved closer, hugging the wall. She watched the man's eyes. He wasn't looking at the doctors. He was looking at the air vents. He was checking the lines of sight. He was calculating exits. "Doctor, wait," Amelia said, her voice cutting through the noise. "He's not psychotic. He's flashing back. You corner him. He's going to kill someone." "Nurse Hart, unless you have a degree in psychiatry I'm unaware of, grab a limb and hold him down," Sterling snapped. 2 security guards, burly men, named Davis and Kowalski, lunged for the patient. It was a mistake. The patient, bleeding from 3 bullet holes in his gut, dropped his center of gravity. He caught Kowalski's wrist, twisted it with a sickening snap, and sent the guard to his knees. In the same motion, he snatched a pair of trauma shears from the counter. The room froze. The patient backed into the corner, the shears held in a reverse grip, blade running along the forearm. A knife fighter's stance. His chest was heaving, blood soaking through the shredded remains of his grey t-shirt. "Back up," the man whispered. The aggression was gone, replaced by a cold, terrifying clarity. "Anyone crosses the line, I sever the brachial artery. I will bleed you out in 90 seconds. Sterling went pale. Code Silver in Trauma 4. We have an armed hostage situation." Amelia didn't move. She stared at the man. There was a tattoo on his inner forearm, partially obscured by blood. It was a trident, but not the standard Navy SEAL trident everyone recognized. It was a skeleton key crossed with a lightning bolt. She felt a chill run down her spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She knew that symbol. She hadn't seen it in 15 years, not since her brother, Michael, had sent her a sketch from a place he wasn't allowed to name. This wasn't a junkie. This wasn't a gangster. This was a ghost. The hospital went into lockdown. The blare of the alarm was deafening, flashing lights painting the hallway in strobes of red and white. Police were already en route. The precinct was only 3 blocks away. Inside Trauma 4, the standoff had turned the sterile room into a kill zone. Dr. Sterling and the remaining nurse, a young girl named Chloe, who was shaking uncontrollably, were huddled by the oxygen tanks. The security guard, Kowalski, was clutching his broken wrist, groaning on the floor. The man, the soldier, stood in the corner. He was swaying. The adrenaline was fading, and the blood loss was catching up to him. His face was grey, sweat beading on his forehead. But the hand holding the shears didn't tremble. "Sir," Sterling stammered, holding his hands up. "You're dying. You have perforated bowels. You need surgery." "No naturalized personnel," the man slurred. He blinked, shaking his head as if to clear static. I need the encryption key. Where is command?" "We aren't command," Sterling said, his voice rising in panic. "We are doctors. You are in a hospital in Seattle." "Seattle is compromised," the man muttered. He looked at the door. Through the small window he could see the first police officers arriving, unholstering their weapons. His eyes hardened. "Hostiles on the perimeter." Amelia stepped forward. She moved slowly, her hands empty and open. "Hart, get back," Sterling hissed. Amelia ignored him. She stopped 10 feet from the man. She needed to see his face clearly. He had a scar running through his left eyebrow and a jawline that looked like it was carved from granite. But it was his eyes, haunted, blue and terrified, that caught her. "Hey," she said softly. The man's gaze snapped to her. The shears raised an inch. "Stay back. I'll drop you." "I know," Amelia said. She didn't use her nurse voice, that soothing, patronizing tone they taught in school. She used the voice she used when her father, a Marine sergeant major, had come home drunk and angry. A voice of iron wrapped in velvet. "You're trained to do it. You've probably done it 100 times. The man blinked. He seemed confused that she wasn't begging. "But you don't want to do it today," Amelia continued, taking a half step closer, "because if you wanted us dead, we'd be dead. You're waiting for something." The man's breathing hitched. He pressed a hand to his side, dark blood welling between his fingers. "Protocol 7 Alpha. Broken arrow." Amelia's heart stopped. Broken arrow. It was the code for a unit that had been overrun and compromised. It was a call for immediate, catastrophic air support on their own position. He thought he was calling down an airstrike on himself to prevent capture. Outside the door, the police were shouting, "Drop the weapon! Come out with your hands up!" "They're coming in," the man whispered. He shifted his grip on the shears. He was preparing to charge the door. If he did, the cops would turn him into Swiss cheese. "They aren't hostiles, Caleb," Amelia said. The name slipped out. She didn't know if it was his name, but she remembered the letters. Her brother Michael had written about a Caleb, the best shooter he'd ever seen, a kid from Wyoming who could hit a quarter from a mile away. "Caleb," the man froze, his head tilted. "Who told you that name?" "Nobody," Amelia lied. She took another step. She was 5 feet away now. "But I know you aren't in the sandbox anymore. Look at the floor, soldier. Look at the tiles." He looked down. "White vinyl," she said. "Not sand, not dirt. Look at the lights. Fluorescent, not the sun." He looked up, blinking rapidly. The reality was starting to bleed through the hallucination. He swayed violently, his knees buckling. He caught himself on the counter. I can't, he gasped. The comms are down. I can't reach the spotter. I'm the spotter, Amelia said. The room went silent. Even Sterling stopped breathing. The man looked at her, searching her face with a desperation that broke her heart. You? I'm the spotter, she repeated, her voice firm. And I'm calling the wind. You're drifting left. You need to correct. You need to stand down, Caleb. That's a direct order. He stared at her, the shears trembling in his hand. For a second, she thought it worked. Then the door burst open. Police, drop it! 3 officers flooded the room, Glocks drawn. The sudden noise shattered the fragile connection. Caleb roared, the hallucination snapping back into place. He didn't drop the weapon. He lunged at the nearest officer, moving faster than a dying man had any right to move. No! Amelia screamed. She threw herself not at the police, but at Caleb. She slammed into his bleeding side, wrapping her arms around his waist. The momentum threw them both to the hard floor. Don't shoot! She screamed, shielding his body with hers. Don't shoot him! Caleb was thrashing beneath her, winding up for a strike that would likely break her neck. Whiskey! Amelia screamed into his ear. Whiskey! Tango! Foxtrot! 4! Niner! The man froze instantly. His arm, raised to strike, hung in the air. The police officers were screaming, lasers dancing on Amelia's back. But she didn't move. She held the man tight, feeling the frantic hammering of his heart against her chest. Sierra 1, she whispered, tears stinging her eyelids. This is Sierra 2. Verify signal. The man dropped the shears. His hand came down, not to strike, but to grip her forearm. His grip was weak, fading. Sierra 2, he wheezed. Verify. Echo. V. I. His eyes rolled back in his head. The fight left him all at once. He went limp in her arms. Get the crash cart! Amelia yelled, rolling off him and immediately applying pressure to his wounds. We're losing him! Don't you dare shoot him! Help me! 4 hours later, the storm was still raging outside, but the hurricane inside St. Jude's had moved to the ICU. Caleb, if that was his name, was alive. Barely. The surgeons had removed 3 bullets, 9mm rounds. Police issue? Or close-range tactical? No one knew. He was intubated, sedated, and handcuffed to the bed rails with heavy-duty steel cuffs. 2 armed MPs, military police, stood outside the glass door. Amelia sat in the break room, her hands shaking around a cup of lukewarm coffee. Her scrubs were stained with his blood. You want to tell me what the hell happened in there? She looked up. Detective Thorne was leaning against the doorframe. He was a good cop, tired and cynical, but fair. I de-escalated a patient, Amelia said. You shouted a bunch of gibberish and tackled a man who just broke a security guard's wrist, Thorne said, pulling out a chair. And then the Navy shows up 20 minutes later and tells us this guy doesn't exist. They wiped the security footage, Hart. Gone. Cloud backups, local servers. Poof. Amelia gripped her cup tighter. Who are they? Men in suits who don't smile, Thorne said. They're transferring him to Bethesda as soon as he's stable. Maybe sooner. They tried to take him an hour ago, but your chief surgeon grew a spine and told them moving him now would kill him. Thorne leaned in. Amelia, you called him Caleb, and you yelled out a call sign. Sierra 1. How did you know that? Amelia looked away. I guessed. Bull, Thorne said. You don't guess a combat recognition code. Who is he? I don't know, she whispered. And that was the truth. She didn't know him. She knew the ghost of him. Well, you better figure it out, Thorne said, standing up. Because those suits, they aren't here to help him. One of the MPs let it slip. They aren't guarding a hero, Amelia. They're guarding a traitor. They said he went rogue, killed his own unit. They're waiting for him to wake up so they can interrogate him, not pin a medal on him. Amelia felt the blood drain from her face. Killed his own unit? That's impossible, she said. Is it? Thorne shrugged. War makes monsters. He left her alone in the break room. Amelia pulled her phone out, Her hands were trembling so bad she could barely type. She opened an old, encrypted app she hadn't used in years. It was a digital shoebox where she kept the scans of Michael's letters. Michael Hart, her little brother, a spotter for SEAL team. Well, they never said the number. He had died 4 years ago in a training accident off the coast of Yemen. That was the official story. Training accident. Closed casket. She scrolled to the last letter she ever received. It was handwritten, scrawled in haste. Evie, things are getting weird. We're working with a guy, call sign Ghost, real name Caleb. He's the best, but he sees things. If anything happens to me, if the story doesn't make sense, remember the code I taught you when we were kids. The treehouse password. The treehouse password. Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. And then a line she had ignored for years, thinking it was just a joke. The ghost knows where the bodies are buried, literally. If I go dark, find the ghost. Amelia stood up. The coffee cup fell into the trash. They were going to interrogate him. They were going to take him to a black site, and he would disappear forever. And whatever he knew about Michael, the truth about the training accident, would die with him. She couldn't let him wake up to a room full of suits. She needed to be the first face he saw. She needed to know why a man Michael trusted had been labeled a traitor. She walked out of the break room, straightened her badge, and headed for the ICU. The MPs blocked the door. "Restricted access, ma'am," the taller one said. He looked like a statue. "I'm his primary care nurse," Amelia said, her voice steady. "He's spiking a fever. I need to check his vitals and adjust the antibiotic drip." "Doctor does that," the MP said. "The doctor is currently arguing with your superiors in the lobby," Amelia bluffed. "And if that man seizes and dies because his temp hits 105, I will personally testify that you blocked medical aid." The MP hesitated. He glanced at his partner. The partner nodded. "Make it quick. Door stays open." Amelia walked in. The room was dim, lit only by the monitors. Caleb lay there, a tangle of tubes and wires. He looked younger now that the rage was gone. Vulnerable. She moved to the bedside. She checked the monitor. Heart rate steady, BP low but stable. She leaned down to his ear. "Caleb," she whispered. No movement. She tried again. "Ghost, this is Sierra 2. His eyelids fluttered. A groan escaped the tube in his throat. His fingers twitched against the restraints. She looked at his hand. The knuckles were bruised violet. And there, under the grime she hadn't cleaned off yet, she saw something else. He had been writing on his own skin. It looked like ink, smeared and faint. She pulled a penlight from her pocket and shone it on his palm. It wasn't ink. It was a series of numbers and letters scratched into the skin with something sharp, maybe a rock or a piece of glass. 47.19N, 122.33W. Project Azrael. "Michael," Amelia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She stared at the name carved into the living flesh of his hand. Michael. He hadn't killed her brother. He was carrying her brother's name like a holy relic. Suddenly Caleb's eyes snapped open. They weren't hazy anymore. They were clear, intense, and focused right on her. He couldn't speak because of the tube, but he tugged violently at his left wrist. He was trying to show her something. Amelia looked at the monitor. His heart rate was skyrocketing. The alarm was about to go off. "Shh, calm down," she whispered. "I see it. I see the name." He shook his head frantically. He jerked his chin towards the IV bag hanging above him. Amelia looked up. The bag was labeled saline/antibiotic mix, standard. But Caleb was staring at it with terror. He mimed choking. Amelia looked closer at the IV line. There was a small injection port near the catheter. A tiny, almost invisible puncture mark was in the plastic of the tubing, fresh. Someone had injected something into the line after it was hung. She followed the line back to the pump. The liquid moving through the tube wasn't clear. It had a faint, milky swirl, potassium chloride. In high doses it causes cardiac arrest. It looks like a heart attack, untraceable if you don't look for it. Someone wasn't waiting for the interrogation. They were trying to assassinate him right here in the ICU. The heart monitor began to beep faster. 140. 150. "Hey!" the MP shouted from the door. "What did you do?" Amelia didn't think. She ripped the IV line out of Caleb's arm. Blood sprayed onto the sheets. "He's coding!" she screamed, spinning around to block the MP's view of the sabotaged bag. "Get the crash cart! Call a code!" As the MP turned to yell down the hall, Amelia grabbed the sabotaged IV bag, shoved it under her scrub top, and grabbed a fresh bag from the shelf, spiking it in seconds. She leaned close to Caleb, whose eyes were wide with panic. "They're here," she whispered. "But so am I. You stay alive, Ghost. You hear me? You stay alive." The chaos in the ICU was absolute. The alarms on Caleb's monitor were screaming a flatline, not because his heart had stopped, but because Amelia had disconnected the leads in a blur of motion. "Code Blue! ICU, bed 3! The intercom blared. Amelia knew she had less than 90 seconds before the crash team arrived. The MPs were shouting into their radios, distracted by the sudden medical emergency. They were soldiers, not medics. They backed away from the perceived death, giving Amelia the chaotic window she needed. She didn't start CPR. Instead, she grabbed a laryngoscope and slashed the tape holding Caleb's breathing tube. "Wake up!" she hissed, pulling the tube out with a sickening wet slide. Caleb gagged, his body arching off the mattress. A violent cough racked his chest, spraying a fine mist of blood. He sucked in a breath of raw air, his eyes wild and unfocused. "Quiet!" Amelia commanded, pressing her hand over his mouth. "If you make a sound, we're both dead. Can you walk?" Caleb nodded weakly. He swung his legs over the side of the bed, his hospital gown soaked in sweat. He was grey, trembling, and running on nothing but adrenaline and the ghost of his training. Amelia threw a lab coat over his shoulders and jammed a surgical cap onto his head. "Lean on me. We're not going out the front." She kicked the brake off the bed, shoving it towards the door to create a blockade, then dragged Caleb toward the nurses' station service elevator, the one used for laundry and waste. As the elevator doors slid shut, she saw Dr. Sterling sprinting down the hall, crash cart in tow, followed by 2 men in dark suits who were definitely not hospital administrators. One of them had his hand inside his jacket. The elevator descended. Caleb slumped against the metal wall, sliding down until he hit the floor. "Extraction point?" he rasped, his voice sounding like broken glass. "The loading dock," Amelia said, checking his pulse. It was thready. "My car is in the employee lot. A beige Honda. It's not a Black Hawk, but it'll have to do." "They'll have the perimeter secured," Caleb muttered, closing his eyes. "Standard containment. They'll check every vehicle." "They won't check the dead," Amelia said grimly. The elevator dinged at the basement level, morgue and pathology. Amelia hauled Caleb up. The hallway was freezing, smelling of formaldehyde and floor wax. She led him not to the exit, but into the pathology prep room. "Get on the gurney," she ordered. "What?" "Get on, pull the sheet up. You're a John Doe who didn't make it." Caleb hesitated, then understood. He climbed onto the stainless steel tray. It was ice cold. Amelia threw a white sheet over him, covering his face. She pushed the gurney towards the loading bay doors where the funeral home vans usually idled. A security guard sat by the rolling door, a clipboard in his lap. It wasn't old man Jerry, who usually worked nights. It was a new guy, thick-necked and alert. Amelia's heart hammered against her ribs. She pushed the gurney with authority. "Hold up," the guard said, standing up. "Where are you taking that? No releases unauthorized during the lockdown." Amelia didn't slow down. She stopped the gurney inches from his shins. She pulled down her mask, revealing a face thunderous with exhaustion and rage. "This isn't a release, genius. This is a transfer to the overflow cooler because the main freezer is busted again. You want to smell a 3-day-old floater? Be my guest. Check him." She grabbed the corner of the sheet. The guard wrinkled his nose, stepping back. The smell of blood and sickness clinging to Caleb was real enough. "Just go," the guard waved her off, not wanting to deal with the paperwork or the smell. Amelia pushed the gurney out onto the rain-slicked concrete of the loading dock. The storm was still raging. Rain lashed at her face, hiding her tears. She scanned the lot. Her car was 50 yards away. "Clear," she whispered. Caleb sat up, the sheet falling away like a shroud. He looked like a corpse that had decided to walk. They made it to the Honda. Amelia shoved him into the passenger seat and reclined it all the way back. She threw a blanket over him, just as a black SUV peeled around the corner of the hospital, searchlights sweeping the lot. She started the engine. It sputtered, then caught. She drove slowly, painfully slowly, toward the exit booth. The barrier arm was down. A police officer waved a flashlight in her face. "ID," he demanded. Amelia handed over her hospital badge. Her hands were steady. She was a nurse. She held people's hands while they died. She could handle a cop. "Rough shift?" the officer asked, flashing the light into the back seat. "I lost a patient," Amelia said, her voice cracking. It wasn't acting. "A young man. He didn't have to die." The cop softened. He didn't shine the light on the pile of blankets in the passenger seat. He saw a grieving nurse. "Go home, Mom. Stay safe." The barrier lifted. Amelia drove out into the rainy Seattle night. She didn't exhale until they were on the highway, headed south. Beside her, Caleb began to shiver violently. "We're clear," she said. "No," Caleb whispered, staring at the side mirror. "We're not. You have a tracker on your car." "What? I don't—" "Every modern car has a GPS transponder. If they have the key, they can find us. Pull over." "I can't pull over on the highway." "Pull over or we die," Caleb roared, suddenly finding the strength to grab the steering wheel. Amelia swerved onto the shoulder, tires screeching on the wet asphalt. Before the car even stopped, Caleb had his door open. He rolled out into the mud, dragging himself under the chassis of her car. "Caleb!" she screamed, jumping out. He was under the rear bumper, using a rock to smash a small plastic box attached to the wheel well. He ripped wires out with his bare hands. He crawled back out, covered in mud and oil, holding a black magnetic box. "They were tracking you," he panted, tossing the device into the brush. "Since you left the hospital. They let us go. They wanted to see where we would run." Amelia stared at the device in the grass. The suits hadn't missed them. They were hunting them. They ditched the car 3 miles later in a mall parking lot and stole a rusty pickup truck that had the keys left in the ignition. A lucky break, or maybe just careless Seattleites. Amelia drove. They headed not to her apartment, but to the one place she knew was off the grid, her grandfather's old fishing cabin on the banks of the Skagit River, 2 hours north. It was dawn by the time they arrived. The cabin was freezing, smelling of pine needles and dust. Amelia helped Caleb inside and dumped him onto the musty sofa. She went to work. She didn't have a full ER, but she had the go bag she kept in her trunk, a habit from being a prepper's daughter. Sutures, antibiotics, lidocaine, saline. She cleaned his wounds. The bullet holes were angry and red, but the surgery had held. The real problem was the poison. "Drink this," she said, handing him a mixture of charcoal tablets and water. "It'll help bind whatever toxins are left in your stomach." Caleb drank it, his hands shaking. He looked at her, his blue eyes finally clearing. "Why?" he asked. "Why what?" "Why did you risk your life for me? You saw the file. I'm a traitor." Amelia sat back on her heels. She pulled the scan of Michael's letter from her pocket, the physical printout she always carried. She handed it to him. Caleb took the paper. He read the words. Whiskey, Tango, Foxtrot. He read the line about the ghost. He closed his eyes, and a single tear cut a track through the grime on his face. "Michael," he whispered. "Heart, your heart's sister. Tell me," Amelia said, her voice hard. "Tell me how he died." Caleb shook his head. "He didn't die in a training accident, Amelia. We were in Yemen, off the books. Operation Azrael." Azrael, Amelia repeated. The angel of death. It wasn't a war, Caleb said, staring at the fire Amelia had built. It was a liquidation. We were sent to take out a terrorist cell. But when we got there, it wasn't a cell. It was a school, a tech school for girls. Amelia covered her mouth. The target was a 14-year-old girl, Caleb continued, his voice devoid of emotion, which made it worse. She had written code, encryption software that the NSA couldn't crack. They didn't want the code. They wanted to make sure no one else got it. The order came down. Clean slate. No witnesses. And you refused, Amelia said. Michael refused first, Caleb said. He broke comms. He stood in front of the door. He told Captain Keller to go to hell. Keller. He's the one running the op. He shot Michael in the chest. Amelia felt the world tilt. She grabbed the edge of the table. He shot him? Double tap to the vest, Caleb said quickly. It knocked him down. I threw a flashbang. I grabbed Michael and we ran. We got separated in the extraction zone. I took 3 rounds to the back. I fell into a ravine. By the time I crawled out, the village was burning. Michael was gone. So he's dead, Amelia whispered, the hope dying in her chest. That's what I thought, Caleb said. He held up his hand, showing the carving on his palm. Until 3 days ago, I was in a holding cell in Germany, waiting for transfer. A guard slipped me a note. It had these coordinates. And a message. The treehouse is still standing. Caleb looked at her intensely. Only Michael knew about the treehouse code. He's alive, Amelia. He's hiding. He has the girl. And he's waiting for extraction. 47.19N, 122.33W. Amelia recited the numbers from his hand. That's here. In Washington. It's the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard, Caleb said. Specifically, the decommissioned dry docks. It's a graveyard for old ships. The perfect place for a ghost to hide. So we go there, Amelia said, standing up. No, Caleb said, trying to rise and failing. I go there. You stay here. Keller knows you're involved now. He'll send the cleaners. You can't even walk, Amelia shouted. You think you're going to infiltrate a naval base, find my brother, and escape a kill squad while your guts are held together by superglue and stitches. I'm a SEAL, Caleb growled. I operate. You're a patient, Amelia yelled back, and I'm the nurse, and right now, I'm the only reason you're breathing. We go together, or you don't go at all. She grabbed a rusted shotgun from the rack above the fireplace. She broke the breech, checking the shells. I know how to shoot, she said. Daddy taught me. Caleb looked at her. He saw the same steel he had seen in Michael. Okay, he said softly. We go together. But before they could move, the sound of a heavy diesel engine cut through the quiet of the woods. Then the crunch of tires on gravel. Caleb's head snapped up. They found us. How? Amelia gasped. We ditched the car. Satellites, Caleb said, pushing himself off the couch, pain etched on his face. Thermal imaging. They're scanning the whole grid for 2 heat signatures in the middle of nowhere. Get down. The front window shattered as a flashbang grenade sailed through the glass. The explosion was deafening. White light seared Amelia's retinas, and the concussion wave threw her against the far wall. Her ears were ringing, a high-pitched whine that drowned out the world. She couldn't see. She could only feel the heat of the fire where the grenade had ignited the rug. A hand grabbed her collar. Caleb. He dragged her across the floor, staying low. Bullets began to chew through the wooden walls of the cabin, sending splinters flying like shrapnel. Thwack, thwack, thwack. Suppressed rifles. Professionals. Kitchen! Caleb yelled, his voice sounding underwater to her damaged ears. They crawled into the kitchen. Caleb overturned the heavy oak table, creating a barricade. He had the shotgun in his hand. 2 shooters at the front, 1 flanking rear, Caleb analyzed instantly. He wasn't the dying patient anymore. He was the Reaper. Amelia, the propane tank, he shouted. What? The stove! Turn on the gas, all the burners. Amelia scrambled to the stove. She twisted the knobs. The hiss of gas filled the small room. "Window!" Caleb pointed to the small window above the sink. "Go!" He boosted her up. She tumbled out into the wet grass of the backyard. It was dark, the rain still falling. Caleb vaulted out after her, landing heavily. He groaned, clutching his side. Fresh blood was seeping through his bandages. "Run to the tree line," he ordered. They scrambled toward the dense forest, 50 yards away. Behind them, 3 figures, clad in black tactical gear, breached the front door of the cabin. "Clear left! Clear right!" a voice shouted. Caleb stopped at the edge of the trees. He raised the shotgun, aiming not at the men, but at the kitchen window they had just exited. "Fire in the hole," he whispered. He squeezed the trigger. The buckshot shattered the kitchen window and sparked against the cast-iron stove inside. The gas ignited. Boom! The cabin didn't just burn, it disintegrated. The blast wave knocked Amelia flat into the mud. A fireball mushroomed into the sky, turning the night into day. The roof collapsed, burying the 3 mercenaries inside a tomb of fire. Amelia lay in the mud, gasping for air. Caleb was beside her, checking the magazine of a pistol he had apparently taken off one of the men during the escape. No, he was holding nothing. He was bluffing. Did we get them?" she stammered. "We got the entry team," Caleb said, scanning the woods with narrowed eyes. "But Keller won't be far behind. He'll have a drone overhead in 5 minutes." He looked at Amelia. Her face was streaked with soot, her scrubs torn. "We need another vehicle," he said, "and we need weapons, real ones." "My neighbor," Amelia said, pointing through the trees. "Mr. Henderson. He's a gun nut. Has a bunker. He's in Florida for the winter." Caleb actually smiled. It was a terrifying, feral smile. "Lead the way, Sierra 2. They raided Henderson's property like locusts. They found an old Jeep Cherokee and a gun safe that Caleb cracked in under 3 minutes. He armed himself with an AR-15 and a Glock 19. He handed Amelia a 9mm Sig Sauer. "Safety off, point and squeeze," he instructed. "I know," she said, checking the chamber. They drove south, avoiding the highways, sticking to the logging roads. Caleb was fading again. The adrenaline from the explosion was wearing off, leaving him grey and shaking. "You're bleeding out," Amelia said, glancing at him. "I'm fine," he lied. "You're not fine. You need a transfusion." "Get me to the shipyard," Caleb rasped. "Get me to Michael. Then I can die." They reached the outskirts of Bremerton at midnight. The Puget Sound Naval Shipyard loomed in the distance, a sprawling industrial complex of cranes and grey warships. "The dry docks are on the north side," Caleb said, looking at a map on his phone. "Restricted access, high security." "How do we get in?" "We don't sneak in," Caleb said. "We knock." He pulled the jeep over. He keyed the radio on the stolen tactical vest he had scavenged from Henderson's stash. It was actually just a hunting vest, but it looked the part. He tuned it to a specific frequency, a military emergency channel. "This is Chief Petty Officer Caleb Thorne," he spoke into the radio, his voice projecting a command authority that chilled Amelia. "Broadcast in the clear. I am initiating Protocol Broken Arrow at Sector North 1. I have the package. I repeat. I have the Azrael package. Hostiles are inbound. Request immediate support." He dropped the mic. "You just told the whole Navy we're here," Amelia hissed. "Exactly," Caleb said. "Keller is operating in the shadows. He's using mercenaries. He can't fight the actual Navy. I just turned the lights on. Now Keller has to race us to the target." He gunned the engine. The jeep roared towards the perimeter fence. "Hold on!" Caleb yelled. He rammed the gate. The chain link tore away with a screech of metal. They were inside. They sped through the maze of shipping containers and massive cranes. "There," Caleb pointed. A massive, rusted hull sat in Dry Dock 4. An old destroyer, stripped for parts. Caleb slammed on the brakes. He stumbled out of the jeep, clutching his rifle. "Michael!" he screamed into the darkness. "Sierra 1, come out!" Silence. Just the wind whistling through the rigging. Then a red laser dot appeared on Caleb's chest. Amelia froze. She raised her gun, but she didn't know where to aim. "Drop the weapon, Ghost!" a voice boomed from the shadows of the ship. It wasn't Michael. A man stepped out from behind a crate. He was wearing a pristine military uniform, a general's stars on his shoulders. He was flanked by 6 heavily armed soldiers who moved with the precision of machines. General Keller. "You're a hard man to kill, Caleb," Keller said, smiling. "And you brought the sister. How convenient. Family reunion." Caleb dropped his rifle. He was too weak to fight 6 men. He sank to his knees. "Where is he?" Caleb spat. "Michael?" Keller laughed. "Oh, Caleb, you really are brain damaged. Michael didn't send you those coordinates." Keller pulled a phone from his pocket. "I did." Amelia felt the blood run cold in her veins. It was a trap. It had been a trap from the beginning. "There is no Michael," Keller said, walking closer, drawing a silver pistol. "He died in Yemen, just like the report said. I needed you to come out of hiding, Caleb. I needed you to bring me the encrypted drive you stole. And look, you brought it to me." He pointed the gun at Caleb's head. "Goodbye, soldier." Click, the sound of a hammer striking a firing pin. But no bang. Keller frowned, looking at his gun. Crack! A gunshot rang out. But it didn't come from Keller. It came from high above, from the rusted bridge of the destroyer. Keller's gun flew out of his hand, shattered by a sniper round. "I wouldn't do that, General," a voice echoed over the shipyard loudspeakers, a voice Amelia hadn't heard in 4 years. "Michael," she whispered. On the deck of the ship, a silhouette appeared. He was holding a long rifle. Beside him stood a small figure, a teenage girl. "Ghost!" Michael's voice boomed. "Get clear! Rain is coming!" The shipyard erupted into chaos. Michael's warning, "Rain is coming," wasn't a metaphor. From the deck of the rusted destroyer, the teenage girl, Sophie, typed furiously on a ruggedized laptop. Suddenly, the massive halogen floodlights illuminating the dry dock exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the entire sector into pitch blackness. "Night vision!" General Keller screamed, scrambling for cover behind a shipping crate. "Kill them all! Free fire zone!" But Keller's mercenaries were fighting on a battlefield that had just been turned against them. High above, a massive crane groaned into life, its hook swinging wildly, controlled remotely by the girl. It smashed into a stack of containers, sending them toppling like dominoes onto the mercenaries' position. Down in the mud, Amelia grabbed Caleb's collar and dragged him behind the wheel of the jeep, just as the windshield disintegrated under a hail of automatic fire. "He's alive!" Amelia sobbed, reloading her pistol with shaking hands. "Caleb, he's alive!" "Stay low," Caleb gritted out. He was running on fumes, his vision tunneling. "He's providing overwatch. We need to flank them." "You can't flank anyone," Amelia yelled. "You can barely stand." "Then you be my legs," Caleb said. He forced the AR-15 into her hands. "I'll draw their fire. You cover the left side. Don't let them circle around." "No," Amelia refused. "We stick together." From the darkness of the ship's hull, the crack of Michael's sniper rifle rang out again. Bang! A mercenary fell. Bang! Another one dropped. Michael was picking them off by muzzle flash alone. Keller, realizing his team was being dismantled by a ghost, panicked. He abandoned his men and sprinted toward the jeep, his backup weapon, a submachine gun, raised. He wasn't trying to escape. He was trying to kill the witnesses. "Die, you traitorous trash!" Keller screamed, spraying bullets at the jeep. Rounds punched through the metal door. Caleb threw himself over Amelia, taking a shard of shrapnel to the shoulder. He groaned, his strength finally failing. Keller rounded the hood of the jeep, the muzzle of his gun leveling at Caleb's head. The general was smiling, his eyes wide with madness. "Game over, Ghost." Amelia was trapped under Caleb's weight. She couldn't raise her gun. Michael couldn't shoot. The angle was blocked by the vehicle. Keller squeezed the trigger. Click! The gun jammed. A stovepipe malfunction. For a split second, there was silence. Keller looked at the gun in disbelief. That second was all Amelia needed. She didn't try to shoot him. She didn't have the angle. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out the only weapon she had left, the flare gun she had taken from the boat kit in Henderson's garage. She shoved the barrel into the gap between the car door and the frame, aiming right at Keller's chest, and pulled the trigger. The magnesium flare hit Keller in the tactical vest. It didn't penetrate, but it ignited instantly, burning at 3,000 degrees. Keller shrieked, dropping his gun and clawing at his burning chest. The blinding red light illuminated him like a demon in the darkness. "Target marked!" Caleb roared, summoning the last of his voice. "Sierra 1, send it!" On the ship, Michael saw the red flare. He didn't hesitate. Boom! The heavy-caliber round from the sniper rifle tore through the night. It hit Keller center mass, ending his scream instantly. The general collapsed into the mud, the flare still sputtering on his chest. Silence fell over the shipyard. The mercenaries, seeing their leader dead and facing an invisible sniper, threw down their weapons. "Cease fire!" Michael's voice boomed over the speakers. "Secure the area!" Amelia pushed Caleb off her. He was unconscious, his breathing shallow. "Caleb!" she screamed, pressing her hands to his neck. A pulse, weak, but there. She looked up at the ship. A rope ladder uncoiled from the deck. A figure slid down, moving with the grace of a man who had spent his life in the shadows. He hit the ground and ran toward them. He pulled his mask off. It was Michael. He was older, scarred, and his eyes were hard, but it was him. He dropped to his knees in the mud. He didn't hug Amelia, not yet. He went straight to Caleb, his hands moving with practiced efficiency over the wounds. "He's hypovolemic," Michael said, his voice rough. "He needs a evac now." "The Navy is coming," Amelia said, tears streaming down her face mixed with rain. Caleb called them. "Broken Arrow." Michael looked at her then, really looked at her. He reached out and touched her face with a gloved hand. "You saved him, Evie," he whispered. "You saved us all." Sirens wailed in the distance. Blue lights flashed against the grey hulls of the ships. The cavalry had arrived. 3 weeks later, the sun was shining on the terrace of the Veterans Rehabilitation Center in San Diego. It was a private facility, funded by anonymous donors who strongly resembled the intelligence community trying to apologize for a massive screw-up. Amelia sat at a small table, 2 coffees in front of her. The door opened and a man walked out. He was using a cane, and he moved stiffly. But he was walking. He wore civilian clothes, jeans and a t-shirt that revealed the healing scars on his arms. "Caleb." He sat down opposite her, wincing slightly as he adjusted his leg. "They tell me I'm retired," Caleb said, taking a sip of the coffee. "Honorary discharge, full benefits, and a non-disclosure agreement the size of a phone book." "And General Keller?" Amelia asked. "Posthumously stripped of rank," Caleb said. "Official story is a training accident. But the data on that drive, it made it to the right people. Project Azrael is shut down. The girls from that school in Yemen, they've been relocated. They're safe." Amelia nodded. "And Sophie?" "MIT gave her a full scholarship," Caleb smiled. "Under a new name, of course. She's complaining that the computer science classes are too easy." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the ocean. "And Michael?" Amelia asked softly. Caleb looked out at the water. "Michael is complicated. He can't come back, Evie. Not really. He's officially dead. But he's out there. He's working for a different kind of unit now. One that answers only to the president." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "He wanted you to have this." Amelia opened it. It was a single line, written in Michael's jagged handwriting. "Sierra 2 is the bravest operator I know. See you in the treehouse." Amelia folded the note and held it to her chest. She looked at Caleb. The ghost was gone from his eyes. He was just a man now, a man who had survived because a nurse had refused to let go. "So," Amelia said, wiping a tear away, "what does a retired SEAL do with his time?" Caleb looked at her, and for the first time, his smile reached his eyes. "I was thinking of taking a first aid class," he said. "I met this nurse. She's incredibly bossy, but she knows her stuff. I figured I could learn a thing or two." Amelia laughed. It was a bright, clear sound that chased away the shadows of the last month. "You're going to be a terrible student," she said. "Probably," Caleb agreed, reaching across the table to take her hand. "But I promise to listen to the teacher." This story reminds us that sometimes the most dangerous battlefields aren't in foreign lands, but in the places we least expect. It wasn't the weapons or the training that saved Caleb's life in that trauma room. It was a sister's love for her brother and her ability to recognize the humanity in a man everyone else saw as a monster. Amelia Hart didn't just heal a patient. She answered a call that no one else could hear. In a world full of noise, she listened to the signal. Wow, what a journey! From the chaotic ER in Seattle to the rain-soaked showdown in the shipyard, Amelia and Caleb's story proves that heroes come in all forms. Some wear combat boots and some wear scrubs. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want more gripping tales of survival, mystery, and true-to-life drama, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. What did you think of the twist with Michael? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.